The humble maid rushed the millionaire's son to the hospital, and his gesture changed everything. Inside the marble mansion in the heart of Manhattan, that morning began with a rare silence. Golden sunlight filtered through tall curtains, glimmering across polished wooden floors, creating a portrait so flawless it seemed nothing could disturb it. Yet inside that flawless tableau, a hairline crack of fate ran straight through the morning. Victor Harrington, the real estate tycoon known for his icy voice and unshakable stare, sat in the grand living room. A steaming cup of coffee rested on the table, thick stacks of contracts spread out before him. For Victor, a morning was never just a morning, it was always the opening round of another battle in the world of money and power. Meanwhile, 4-year-old Danny, with rosy cheeks and a radiant smile, raced down the endless hallway as if the entire mansion was his private playground. His laughter echoed against cold marble walls, filling the space with warmth no fortune could ever buy. It was the only sound that could pierce Victor's hardened heart, though he would never admit it. At a quiet corner near the dining room, Maria Alvarez, a Latina immigrant, wiped the long dining table with a damp cloth. She had worked there for only a few months, always keeping herself quiet, almost invisible. For Maria, this mansion was not her world. It was just a place to survive. She knew her boundaries: silence, hard work, and invisibility. But on this very day, all boundaries would collapse. Danny was running when he suddenly stopped. His small hand clutched at his chest, his face contorted in pain. The laughter died away, and in an instant his little body crumpled onto the hard marble, the thud ricocheting off stone and glass like a sudden thunderclap tearing through the air. "Danny!" Victor's scream ripped through the silence, nothing like the cold, commanding tone he was known for. He lunged toward his son, but his trembling hands froze. He didn't know what to do. The household staff, maids, butlers, even bodyguards, stood paralyzed. No one dared touch the boy. No one dared cross the invisible line of power that hung over the mansion. Time itself seemed to freeze. Only Maria, still clutching her cloth, let it fall from her hand. Her heart pounded wildly as a horrific memory surged back. Her daughter Anna collapsing in her arms years ago, her breath stolen by a fever that came too fast and ended too soon. Maria knew exactly what it meant to lose a child, and she could not, would not, let it happen again, even if this child was not her own. Tears blurred her eyes as she rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside Danny. "He's not breathing," she cried, her voice trembling yet steady. Without a second thought, she scooped him into her arms, pressing his small body against her chest. Victor stared in shock. His entire life had been built on giving orders, on control, on power. Yet now he was powerless. The woman he had barely noticed until this moment was the only one who dared to act. In the suffocating panic of that moment, Victor's world shattered. Money, influence, prestige, none of it mattered. All that remained was his son, limp in the arms of a woman who lived in the shadows of his household. The golden silence of that morning had been broken, and from that very instant, none of their lives would ever be the same again. Maria clutched the boy tightly in her arms, her legs trembling, but her heart blazing with resolve. "We have to get to the hospital now!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the vast marble hall. No one answered. The staff stood frozen, as if fear had turned them to stone. Without another second wasted, Maria dashed toward the door. Her cheap shoes pounded urgently against the marble floor, mingling with her ragged breaths. Danny lay limp against her chest, his eyelids shut, his fragile breaths so faint they seemed ready to disappear into thin air. Victor stood stunned for a heartbeat, then something primal erupted within him. He bolted after her, not as the cold billionaire he was known to be, but as a desperate father. For the first time in years, he ran without knowing where he was headed, only that he had to hold on to the fragile life slipping away. Victor's luxury car waited by the gate. Maria gasped as she pulled the door open, clutching Danny to her chest. Victor gripped the wheel, slammed his foot on the accelerator, and the engine roared, tearing through Manhattan streets and shattering the morning calm. Inside the car, Maria cradled Danny close, her tears falling onto his soft hair. "Don't give up, my angel. Please don't give up." Her voice broke apart, but her hands kept a steady rhythm, as if willing strength into the boy's tiny heart. Victor glanced through the rearview mirror, catching sight of Maria's tears streaming down her face, and something strange stirred in him. He had never seen anyone surrender themselves so completely for another's child. His world was full of people chasing profit, contracts, and advantage. Yet here was a cleaning woman, a stranger, fighting for his son as though he were her own flesh and blood. Horrific memories flashed in Maria's mind. Anna, her little girl, her flushed face burning with fever, cracked lips gasping weakly before going silent forever. She had once carried her daughter through crowded streets, running frantically, but the hospital had been too far, and help had come too late. Since that day, Maria had lived with an emptiness no one could fill. Now, with Danny collapsing into her arms, her heart screamed, "Not again, never again." The car shot through intersections, ignoring red lights, horns blaring angrily from other drivers. Victor had never driven like this before. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, his eyes bloodshot, but he would not stop. Beside him, Maria whispered broken prayers through her tears, pressing Danny tightly to her chest, as if she could lend him her very breath. From afar, the wail of ambulance sirens began to mingle with the frantic beating of their hearts. The city blurred into shadows. Inside that speeding car, there was only one mission: to snatch life back from the brink. And in that chaos, two souls from opposite worlds, a powerful billionaire and an invisible maid, were bound together by the same desperate heartbeat. Neither of them knew that this frantic run was not only a fight for a child's survival, but also the beginning of a destiny that would forever intertwine their lives. The hospital doors burst open, sirens wailing, announcements echoing through the halls. Maria rushed out of the car, still clutching Danny in her arms, shouting, "We need a doctor now. He's not breathing." Nurses and on-call doctors sprinted over. A small stretcher was wheeled out, and within seconds, Danny was laid upon it. Skilled hands hurried to attach tubes, check his pulse, fit a mask. The corridor blazed under white fluorescent light, every sound pounding like drums in the air. Victor trailed close behind, his face drenched in sweat. He was no longer the real estate titan wielding power over skyscrapers, but just a helpless father lost in the whirlwind of a hospital. His hurried steps felt painfully slow compared to the medical team pushing his son further away. Maria stood frozen in the corridor, her trembling hands still remembering the warmth of the child against her chest. She had never imagined she would relive this moment, a battlefield where life and death were separated by a single breath. A doctor turned back, shouting, "We need type O blood!" Nurses rushed to prepare, while Victor stood numb, his gaze fixed, his mind blank. For once, his power meant nothing. No wealth, no influence could buy his son's survival in this very second. Maria looked at him, at that face that once radiated untouchable authority, now twisted in terror. For a fleeting moment, she realized how alike they truly were. Two people scarred by loss, swallowed by grief, now fighting to protect a fragile soul. Minutes stretched into centuries. Victor paced the hall, tearing at his hair, eyes locked on the emergency room door. Maria folded into a cold plastic chair, fingers laced so tight her knuckles blanched, as if holding herself from breaking. Memories of Anna surged back, the fevered night, the sluggish bus, the nurse's careless words, and finally the flatline on the monitor. Her heart splintered all over again. "If only this child lives," Maria whispered through tears. "That's all I ask, Lord. Please don't take another child away." The doors swung open, and a doctor emerged with firm words. "The boy is stable. We've controlled the seizure. He'll need intensive monitoring now." Maria broke down, covering her face with her hands, as if thousands of stones had lifted from her back. Victor staggered against the wall, drew in a long breath, and exhaled as though he had been pulled back from the abyss. In his eyes, the icy shield was gone, replaced by rare gratitude, and it was all directed toward Maria. As the bed was wheeled out, Danny remained unconscious, but his features softened, his breath steadying. Maria stepped forward, gently stroking his hair, her tears falling onto the white sheet. Victor stood beside her, silently watching. In that moment, he knew his son's survival wasn't only thanks to medicine, but also to the unflinching courage of a woman he had once overlooked. And at the far end of that corridor, amid the rhythmic hum of machines, an invisible thread quietly bound three hearts together: a grieving father, a mother haunted by loss, and a child who had just been wrested from death's grasp. The intensive care room glowed under soft amber light. The steady beep of the heart monitor sounded like a fragile bridge holding on to life. Danny lay there, color returning to his cheeks, his chest rising and falling in calm rhythm. Maria sat in a chair beside the bed, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes still red from tears. She could hardly believe that only hours ago this child had felt like a falling leaf in her arms. Victor entered, shirt damp with sweat, hair disheveled, but his gaze was different now. No longer the icy mask he wore to command the world, but something raw, vulnerable, achingly human. He stood still for a moment, looking at Maria, then exhaled a long, heavy sigh. "You saved my son," he said, his voice hoarse yet steady. Maria shook her head gently, her voice trembling. "I only did what any mother would have done." The simple reply pierced Victor's heart like an arrow. He knew behind those words lay a story of loss he had only heard in hushed fragments from the staff. Silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic hum of machines. Victor lowered himself into a chair opposite her. They sat side by side, separated only by the bed of a fragile child. Moments later, Danny's eyelids fluttered. His lashes trembled before his clear eyes opened, searching. Maria leaned closer, holding his small hand. "Danny," she whispered, "you're safe now." The boy's lips moved, and the first word he uttered was not Dad, but Maria, weak but unmistakable. Victor froze, his expression flickering. He wanted his son to turn only to him, yet the truth was undeniable. The boy had called out to the woman who had carried him through the valley of death, and strangely, Victor felt no jealousy, only a profound sense of relief. Danny squeezed Maria's hand, then looked up at his father. "Dad, she helped me." Victor nodded, his voice low. "I know, and I'll be forever grateful." The three sat in silence, but the air no longer weighed heavy. Instead, a new calmness filled the room, as though even the cold hospital walls had softened. Maria bent down and kissed Danny's forehead. The gesture, instinctive and maternal, made Victor pause. He saw in her not just courage, but a love so genuine no fortune could ever buy it. And in that moment, something shifted. An invisible door opened, one neither Maria nor Victor had ever imagined could exist. News of the incident inside Victor's mansion spread faster than anyone could have imagined. A short video clip of Maria carrying Danny through the hallway, Victor rushing after her, had been uploaded to social media. Within hours, it became the talk of the city. "Who is she?" hundreds of comments asked beneath the clip. "His maid? Or something more?" Some posts dripped with suspicion, while others spun wild stories about her role. At the hospital, Maria tried to look away from the phone screen Rosa, her close co-worker, held up. But the whispers were everywhere, echoing even through the cold hospital corridors, weighing heavily on her heart. In the waiting area, two women by the coffee machine murmured, "Rich men like that. There's always a scandal." The other replied, more softly, "Or maybe she was the only one brave enough to act when the boy needed it." Maria heard them but pretended not to. She was used to judgmental glances, but this time the rumors spread like wildfire, impossible to contain. When Victor returned from a call with the doctor, he found Maria sitting curled in a corner, her fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. He had seen that look before, the look of someone pushed to the margins, left to face everyone's judgment alone. "Don't mind them," Victor said, his voice deep and steady. "You know the truth, and so do I." Maria lifted her head, eyes red but unwavering. "I don't fear what they say about me. I only fear what it might do to Danny. And to you." Victor froze. He was used to being at the center of every headline, but this was the first time someone else worried for him. Maria's sincerity touched a part of him he hadn't realized was still alive. That night, under the dim glow of hospital lights, Maria sat quietly in the room. Every footstep, every passing glance from a nurse reminded her how fragile her place here was. But when she looked at the hospital bed and saw Danny sleeping peacefully, his tiny hand gripping a stuffed bear, she knew none of the whispers outside mattered. Elsewhere in the city, online tabloids began to churn. One headline screamed, "The mystery woman beside millionaire Victor amid family crisis." Maria's face had been cropped from the video, twisted by tears and worry. Yet in that small hospital room, Maria whispered to herself, as if to anchor her soul, "I'm not here for praise or for lights. I'm here because a child needed me." And that whisper was what held her steady against the storm of judgment. The atmosphere inside the hospital slowly calmed, but outside, storms raged on. New articles appeared, no longer just speculation, but digging into Maria's private life. They unearthed old addresses, questioned former neighbors, even fabricated stories about a past she had never shared. Maria bit her lip when she saw the headline, "Woman with a shady past now beside millionaire Victor." A photo of her wiping tears at Danny's bedside was paired with a fabricated tale of seizing opportunity to climb into wealth. Rosa fumed, wanting to fight back, but Maria stopped her. "The more we explain, the more they twist our words," she said, her voice weary. Victor witnessed everything. He was used to the cruelty of the press, but this time the storm targeted not him, but an innocent woman. It made him feel as though he had failed to protect her. Meanwhile, whispers in the hospital corridors grew louder. A nurse muttered, "A woman like her, how can she be so close to Mr. Victor's son?" A guard shook his head. Could be a scheme? Maria heard every word, but she chose silence. Only when Danny woke and clung to her hand, whispering, "Maria, don't go," did her heart find an anchor. But the true blow came from within Victor's own mansion. That afternoon, a trusted family manager brought troubling news. "Someone on the board has filed an anonymous complaint to child welfare," he whispered. "They accuse you of overstepping, of exploiting trust to replace a mother's role." Maria froze. Each word cut like a blade. She had never wanted to replace anyone, only to follow what her heart demanded. Victor's fists clenched. He knew exactly whose hand was behind this cowardly strike. Rebecca, his longtime image consultant. The woman who had always insisted he keep his image clean and avoid emotional risks. That evening, Rebecca arrived at the hospital, perfectly composed, her voice smooth, but her words sharp as knives. "Victor, I've prepared a press release. We'll say Maria is just temporary staff, nothing personal. Best to remove her from the spotlight before things spiral out of control." Maria bowed her head. She did not cry, but her heart grew unbearably heavy. Victor stood in silence for a moment, then spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "She has a name. She saved my son. No one has the right to erase that. Rebecca blinked, surprise flashing before turning cold. You're letting feelings ruin everything. Investors will waver. The board will revolt. Victor met her eyes. Let them. I've buried enough to please a boardroom. I won't bury the truth that saved my son. In that moment, Maria realized this fight was no longer hers alone. It was theirs. But she also knew betrayal had entered the stage, and it would test them with harsher blows yet to come. That night, as Danny slept peacefully, Maria sat by the window holding the worn photo of her daughter she kept in her pocket. She whispered, "My child, I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but I know I must stay for this boy and for my own heart." In the corridor, Victor's voice rumbled over the phone, firm and resolute. Find out who leaked the story, and if Rebecca truly orchestrated this, she will face the cost. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. Shadows of betrayal had emerged, and both he and Maria would have to learn how to stand firm in the storm ahead. At dawn the next day, as gentle light filtered through the hospital window, Maria thought a new day might bring peace. But that peace was shattered almost immediately by troubling news. A security guard rushed in, his face tense. "Mr. Victor, the police are at the gate. They have a search warrant regarding a missing piece of jewelry." Victor frowned, while Maria froze. "What jewelry?" she asked. The guard lowered his voice. "A necklace that once belonged to your late wife. It went missing last night, and—" His eyes flicked toward Maria, hesitating. "They claim it was found in the women's staff locker room." The room went still. Rosa cried out, "Impossible! This is clearly a setup." Maria said nothing. Her heart pounded, but her gaze stayed calm. She was used to suspicion, used to being scrutinized. But this time it was different, because everything had been staged to make her the culprit. The police entered, polite but stern. They presented the warrant and asked to check Maria's belongings. Victor was about to protest, but Maria touched his arm gently. "Let them. If I fear no truth, then I fear no search." Her small bag was opened, neatly folded clothes, an old Bible, a photo of her daughter. Nothing more. But then another officer walked in carrying a clear evidence bag. Inside lay a finely crafted gold necklace, along with a piece of pale blue fabric identical to Maria's uniform. "We found this in the locker room," the officer said. Maria stared at the item. She had never touched it, but the truth was already twisted. Rosa shook with rage. "Someone planted it there. Can't you see?" Rebecca appeared right on cue, her voice cold yet dripping with false sympathy. "Maria, unfortunately, with evidence like this, it will be hard to explain." Victor turned on Rebecca, his eyes darkening. "You're too quick to conclude, Rebecca. Could it be you already knew this would happen?" She flinched, but quickly masked it with composure. "I only think of your image, Victor. The entire city is watching." Maria stood tall, meeting the officer's eyes. "I did not steal. I swear before God and before my late daughter that I would never do such a thing." The firmness in her gaze silenced the older officer for a long moment. At last, he nodded. "We will continue investigating, but for now, you must remain available for cooperation." When the police left, Maria sat down on a cold chair in the corridor. Victor came beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "This is not your fault. Someone is trying to destroy you, and I will not let them succeed." Maria gave a faint smile, her eyes misty. "I don't fear for myself. I only fear Danny will be hurt if he believes their lies." Just then, Danny stirred awake, calling out, "Maria, come here." He stretched out his hand, his eyes glowing with innocent trust. Maria walked over and held his small hand tightly. In that moment, she knew, no matter how the world cornered her, she would stand firm, because one little heart still believed in her. Victor watched the scene, his resolve hardening. He understood, if betrayal was allowed to prevail, they would lose not only honor, but the most precious thing of all, the truth. The next morning, the atmosphere in the hospital felt as heavy as a courtroom awaiting its verdict. News of the stolen necklace had already leaked outside. Tabloids screamed, "Hero or thief?" with photos of Maria carrying Danny down the hallway. Maria sat quietly by the window, her eyes on her calloused hands. She had endured suspicion all her life, but never had slander weighed so heavily. Victor entered, his face tense. "They're turning you into a scapegoat, Maria, but I won't let that happen." Rosa burst in, breathless, clutching a USB drive. "I asked a friend in security. They just recovered footage from a backup camera in the rear corridor." They hurried to play it. The grainy video flickered, but clear enough to reveal the figure of a woman in a hood carrying a small bag. When she lifted her head, dim light glinted off a pair of long, teardrop-shaped earrings. Maria held her breath. Rosa whispered, "I know those earrings. They don't belong to Rebecca. They belong to Julia, her assistant." A heavy silence filled the room. Victor tapped the desk, his eyes burning with controlled fury. Rebecca. She used Julia. By afternoon, Julia was summoned. At first, she denied everything, her eyes darting nervously. But when the footage played, her face turned pale. "Enough," Victor said, his voice deep and commanding. "Tell the truth." Julia trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't want to do it. But Rebecca said we needed a scapegoat to protect your reputation. She told me if I refused, I'd lose my job. I planted the necklace in Maria's locker." Maria closed her eyes, tears sliding down her face. Not from anger, but from relief. The truth had finally broken through. Just then, Rebecca entered, her posture still composed. But when she saw Julia sobbing, she knew the game was over. "You are cruel," Victor said, each word heavy as stone. "You dared to turn Maria's sacrifice into a stain. You dared to tarnish the honor of the woman who saved my son." Rebecca did not answer. For a fleeting moment, her eyes flickered with regret, but it quickly vanished. Adjusting her coat, she said simply, "I will withdraw. From now on, handle your own image." The door shut behind her. Inside, the room felt lighter. Julia sobbed, turning to Maria. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this." Maria looked at the young woman. There was no hatred in her gaze, only a deep sorrow. "Remember this lesson. Never let anyone turn you into a tool for their lies." Victor gripped Maria's shoulder firmly. "You are not alone. I promise no one will ever hurt you like this again." From his bed, Danny's small voice rang out. "I knew it. Maria would never steal. Maria is the one who saved me." Those innocent words fell like a final verdict. The lies crumbled, leaving only the shining clarity of truth in a child's eyes. As dusk settled, the hospital corridors grew quieter than in the days before. Maria sat by Danny's bed, her hand gently holding his tiny fingers. The steady beeping of the monitor echoed like a reassuring lullaby. Victor lingered at the doorway, his gaze softening. For the first time in days, he no longer saw this room as a prison, but as a place of healing. "He's sleeping peacefully now," Maria whispered, "as if he's finally found his own breath again." Victor sat down beside her, his hand brushing her arm. "Not just Danny, but me too. For years I lived with wounds I never dared show. But you've shown me how to face them instead of hiding." Maria grew still. In her mind, Anna's image rose again, her little girl, whose smile had been stolen too soon. "Some wounds feel like they'll never close," she said softly. But today I felt as though Anna was there with me, holding my hand as I carried Danny down that hallway. Victor drew a deep breath, his voice thick with emotion. I know that feeling. Elisa, my wife, she died from an unforeseen complication. From that day, I shut my heart away, believing money and power were enough to mask the emptiness. But today, I see how wrong I was. Maria turned to him. In that moment, they were no longer a billionaire and a maid, but simply two souls carrying the same scars. Victor, she said, her voice trembling yet firm, we cannot change the past, but we can turn pain into strength, so no child has to suffer the way Anna did, or the way Danny almost did. Victor's eyes lit with resolve. He clasped Maria's hand tightly, not as a gesture of formality, but as a vow. We'll make it happen. I want to establish a foundation in Elisa and Anna's names, a place with doctors, ambulances, medicine, for families who have no voice. And I want you by my side as the keeper of its flame. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. She nodded. If it can save even one child, I'll do it. Not for me, but for every mother out there. Danny stirred in his sleep, his lips murmuring faintly. Maria. Both adults leaned closer, and in the tender glow of the hospital room, three souls, a once proud man, a woman scarred by loss, and a child who had escaped death's shadow, found each other within the embrace of healing. The next morning, gentle sunlight streamed through the hospital window, filling the room with warmth. Maria woke from a brief nap to find Danny sitting up in bed, his clear eyes gazing outside. Look, Maria, the boy pointed, the sun has come back. His innocent words tightened Maria's chest. That new light did not just brighten the room, it shone into their hearts, hearts that had survived the shadows. Victor entered, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. He handed one to Maria, his voice soft. This isn't coffee from an employer, it's from a grateful man. Maria smiled, accepting it. The warmth seeped into her hands, a reminder she was no longer alone. Moments later, the doctor arrived with good news. Danny was strong enough to go home. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Maria carefully folded the small blanket. Rosa packed the belongings, while Victor bent down to tie his son's shoelaces. A simple act, yet filled with all the love in the world. As they left the hospital, the morning light fell upon 3 figures walking side by side. At the doors, a few reporters waited, cameras flashing in the sun. Victor paused, took Maria's hand, and gently pulled Danny closer. We walk together, he said firmly. Questions fired from every direction, but Victor gave only one answer. This is my family, and this is the woman who saved us. The flashes exploded, but Maria no longer bowed her head. She stood tall, her hand tightly clasping Danny's small fingers. Back at the mansion, the once cold halls seemed to breathe again. In the garden, Victor had Rosa move the lavender pot to a sunnier corner. Beside it floated a yellow balloon, swaying gently in the breeze, a symbol of hope. Maria paused, looking up at the sky, whispering, Anna, do you see? I kept my promise. Victor stepped closer, his voice deep yet warm. And Elisa will see too. From today, we begin again, not only with our pain, but with love and courage. Danny laughed brightly, tugging them both toward the swing set in the garden. Together they sat, listening to the echo of a child's laughter, like a hymn to a new beginning. In that moment, Maria realized, wounds may leave scars, but the sun still rises, and love can turn even the coldest house into a home. A new dawn had come, and this time they would walk it together.